Okay, I'm teaching a class, and I hope nobody gets angry in the class because I'm reviewing some of the things we've gone over, and I learned things, and I hope you don't not take a class because you think this videos are a substitute. They're really not, because you get to meet people, ask questions, and make mistakes. Well, that's the best part. Uh, I'm going to work through circular references in the context of a debt service reserve account. This is going to necessitate, if we're going to use a user-defined function, it's going to necessitate again, that stupid word. It's going to necessitate a array in in UDF, if we use UDF now. And so that's just the next part. And I really just want to introduce a little bit of a little bit some of the next concepts in the UDF of an array variable or not. Now, I have to tell you, I'm showing you some step by step methods to use this UDF approach. If you have multiple debt issues, some complicated sculpting, I hope that you'd consider this alternative way, which is to work through to use this template we've designed for many years now, which reads in many variables. If you want, if you don't want, it can cover whatever, LC fees on the upfront equity, and blah, okay, different funding techniques and all the rest. So this is meant to take any fear and make sure that you understand the general process of what's going on. All right, now before we get into this, I have been modeling the effects of the circular reference on the DSRA incorrectly for many years. Now, in setting up a DSRA account, what I typically do, and I've made other videos on this, is I first find the debt service. Okay, and in this case, please, hopefully, I probably did this badly, but if I'm pressing F2, I can see kind of where the debt service comes from. And it comes from the interest that I did not allocate to IDC. It's just the interest expense and the repayment. I've got, I think, sculpting this method. Now, after we do this, it is possible, and I made, if I'm going to press Control and the square bracket, and F5, of course, to come back, one more time, then I'm trying to make this Control U account and everything else. I put an option for here, a letter of credit, but I put a 12 months DSRA account, or we could put an 18-month, and I have 3 periods in the model. I mean, the 6-month periods. So we want to make sure that we can put longer or shorter DSRA accounts, and eventually we want to be able to model the effect of a letter of credit rather than a cash-funded DSRA, and see what the effects of these alternative possibilities are on the equity IR. Okay, so we start with our debt service, and then here's the first problem is if we want to put together, whoops, wrong one. If I want to put together how much forward-looking DSRA we have, if we just put equal offset, and go up here and go to the debt service, well, if I keep it on the same row, and then go forward one column, I can do that, and we'll always go forward one column. But then I would like to sum the next two columns. To do that, all you do is put equals sum and then offset. And then please don't be proud of this. When I did, I thought, oh, I'm cool because I can do this. And we keep it on the same row, go forward one column, and then if we're using the fast modeling standard, we don't put this in, we put 1, and then we press the F4. I'm getting some messages today, sorry about it, because it's April Fool's, and nobody believes me. It's very sad. If we do this, then it will go forward, Shift Control R, because I have the generic macros open, it will go forward 2 periods. But we just want this period right before we want to fund this DSRA, at least I'm assuming. We want to fund it right during the pre-COD period, the funding period, and then it's right. So what we could do is make a little flag that says, just don't take this one. I don't want to take this one, but I still want these over here. We want a flag that is just here. It's just set to 1 for the last PCOD period, and we want another flag that's just for the future period. And eventually the DSRA, as the debt goes down to 0, and we have half of a period at the end. And eventually what we really should do is, or we could, use this DSRA in sculpting the debt. That's where it gets really, really painful. So we could almost, this DSRA is such an annoyance. This is what Eric told me, the word annoyance. It's just a horrible annoyance, all of these things. So now I'm going to fix it by multiplying it by this flag. Now, what I did by doing it like this is, I wanted to be like fast modeling standards and not put it over here. The 2, as if that makes, for me, it just doesn't make much of a difference, and you can work on the labeling if you want. I don't understand why you always have to put those in separate lines and make your model about 3 times as big, but whatever, if you want to do that, of course. Okay, so there's our DSRA requirement, and then we say, well, okay, how much do we have to fund into our DSRA account or take away? What's going on here? We have some funny things happening where we finally take a bunch of it away at the very end because it's negative. And if I Shift Control C, I put a new thing in the generic macros to do this. I hope it's going to be red. Yes, okay. All right, we're going to take it away over here. That means I should be careful about using red things. This coloring is so important. So one person asked me what really is my passion in life, and I was true. I said, it's coloring Excel sheets. Now we can sum this. What we're going to do is take this total funding we need, which is the amount required minus the opening balance, which is the amount we already have. That's how much we need. And we're going to allocate that differently depending on if it's pre-COD or after COD. And this stuff gets funded, and it's got to be paid by either equity or debt and equity, never all debt. Well, maybe if you have an EBL, it's funded by an EBL, and that's kind of like debt. But we have to be very careful. If somebody says that's funded by debt, they're not quite correct, because DSRA is part of the funding requirements. And if you're funding 80-20, it's funded by 80% debt, 20% equity. If the DSRA is independent, if the DSCR is determining your debt size, and your debt size is totally independent of the DSRA, it's funded all by equity. To understand this, and then we might want to take stuff out of the DSRA and do all those kind of things. Now, if we go up to the circular references in our model, and now when we do this, okay, if I I'm going to put the computed capex, there's no circular reference associated with that, and then I'm going to go down to the IDC, and the IDC, I've talked about this just too many times, but the IDC is the sum of all the IDC over here. Now, if I make this equal to just this level, this number, we get a circular reference, and you can see, and this is important, you can see how the blue lines are moving back and forth. They're not just a straight line, they're accumulating. And when they accumulate like that, we're going to have some problems in our circular reference. So I'm going to make this fixed. Now later we're going to make a UDF column here and show you how to just really finish this whole thing. But I'm trying to do this in stages and make this hopefully understandable so you won't go completely crazy. And then we can go to our upfront fee. And again, this upfront fee and IDC, where these things come from is downstairs when you're computing your debt balance. You go through and work through the debt balance, which comes, and the debt balance in this case, I hope it comes from the up here, the sources and uses, and the sources and uses is affected by this. So all the upfront fees and the commitment fees and everything else, they ultimately come from downstairs, and whenever you have to go down to get something, it's going to be a mess. Okay, and then what you could do is very, very quickly just do a copy and paste, and it's just so ridiculously easy. You go to Developer tab. Well, first you better name the ranges. It's so ridiculously. Being proud of this is just such junk. Shift Control F3, maybe that's the hardest part. Make a range name. Make a range name for the difference between the computed and the fixed. Shift Control F3. Why don't we just copy computed to fixed, just because that's essentially what we're going to be doing in the macro. Hopefully the difference didn't go down to 0. Good, it's not 0. Get rid of this. I don't want that here. Oh, look how bad I am at Excel. Other people are so much better to know how to get rid of this. Now, I made a range name here, right? This has got difference, and this range name down here is called computed, and this range name here is called fixed. And we press alternate F11 maybe, and what do I have here? Oh my gosh, I better not do this. I better just press alternate and F8. Maybe that's a better way, because maybe I just want to go to this workbook, and I'm going to call this, I've got some copy and paste. I'm going to call this copy, paste 2. How's that? And then I'm going to create it. And all I do is I put do while range difference is not equal to 0, and then you put a range fixed. I hope I called it fixed. One more time. Dot value equal range computed dot value, and then you put loop. Now I think I'm such a cool person because I can do that, and then I'm going to right click and assign this one to copy paste 2, and we run it, and it gives us a value of 0, and we're so proud of this. But now, if I go down to the DSRA and put an equal sign in our DSRA and go downstairs and get the this amount, this pre-COD period amount, it gives me a circular reference. And this time, and then I can put a sum over here, and this time when I go downstairs to get this stupid thing, I can't just, like I did with the other ones, I can't just take the computed level from down here and fix it. And I thought, oh, okay, so I thought like everybody else, you're going to have to make a whole line for the funding needs computed, funding needs fixed, put the difference in and go through. It turns out you don't have to do that. Another April Fool's. Instead, let's just make some random fixed amount. Or let's do this. Let's this we're going to get a fixed amount here. Okay, this computed amount. See, I haven't done this. I'm getting lost. This fixed amount comes from way down here. Okay, and then we've got to do 2 steps. Okay, we still got a circular reference. Copy and paste specialist values. Okay, still not working. But you go down here, and on the DSRA, take the fixed amount from up here in, and you press F4, and you multiply that fixed amount by the flag. And you copy that one across, and now we'll just do a sum of this. And now I've got a 0. Just a minute. Oh, God. Why did I... this fixed amount, this calculated amount, I copied calculated to fixed. Did I do the wrong thing? Okay. And now we get a difference, and now we run it. And we don't have to, and this for me is a key. People tend to follow rules. And when you follow the rules, you're going to make some long copy and pasting on the entire funding needs when you don't have to. Now it's perhaps, I don't know if it's faster or not, but it's simpler. It was a little bit painful to do. Okay, now let's go to our circularity thing. Now I'm going to, right now I've got a different example. I didn't put the DSRA kind of in the full thing. I put 80%. I just made an assumption that we're funding 80-20. And I just made a random kind of assumption that the DSRA has to be 10% of the debt, or it could be 5%, might be more realistic. Okay. Now, I put some CapEx in, and after the CapEx I went through and got the debt from the total funding needs. This is the sum of all the debt over our construction period. And then I computed the DSRA as the total debt here. I later press F4, shouldn't I? And multiplied by the DSRA, multiplied by a flag, and multiplied by the DSRA percentage. We press F4. So we've got, it's a little more complicated. And then we have a kind of horrible circular reference where it goes around, and it's not quite as simple again. Okay. And because the debt depends on the DSRA, and the DSRA depends on the debt. I suppose we could fix the debt, but I fixed the DSRA. I'm going to show you how to fix this DSRA, because if I could take this computed DSRA and, whoops, just a minute. This DSRA is, I multiplied it by the debt. What I should, let me do it. Excuse me for this. It's just one little mistake. Sorry. I'm going to take this debt and multiply it by the DSRA percentage. That's kind of a little bit more what we did before. And then I'm going to take this DSRA. This is like our computed DSRA. I'm going to press F4 and multiply that by the flag. Okay? I'm still getting a circular reference. But then if I instead put the DSRA computed here and put a fixed number here, and if I instead multiply this by a fixed number down here, Shift Control R, I have it over here, no circular reference, and if I change to this 10%, we have a bigger a number, and the only reason this is working is because I've already made one. So what we would have to do is a copy from the computed to the fixed, and then we'd have a difference, and we'd go around and around and do what we did last time. But this time, we're going to do it with a UDF. And when we do a UDF, let's go through step by step. Press alternate F11. That's the thing we did last time. And this time, put a function. How about DSRA Compute? Because I already have a DSRA, because I cheated in practice. And as normal, you put DSRA Compute equal debt, total debt, let's call it total debt to make it really clear, times the DSRA PCT. And remember, just like what I did in the last video, you put DSRA PCT in here, okay? And you've got step 1 done, and you're starting at the bottom. But then we need total debt. And to get the total debt, we put total debt. And then we're going to use something I introduced last video, but it's total debt. You can put worksheet function dot sum. And when we put sum, we can put the debt funding. Okay, now that's going to be a little bit tricky. This debt funding has to have, it's called an array variable. Now, to introduce what an array variable is, I'm going to put a function sum2. Okay, it's just a different sum function. If I want to, let's say I want to sum the, let's sum the capex over here. Why not? The sum. But we're going to make it sum2. We're going to make a sum function. And the reason I'm doing this is to introduce a little bit of how an array works in a VBA. And it's a little bit painful. And what you'd have to do is you have to read in the stuff, whatever that is. But that could be either a whole length of a section, a whole a range, or it could be a single number. And this is one of the very, very confusing things. And I don't know why it's so confusing, but the VBA and the Excel don't differentiate between kind of if you're reading in a whole series, a whole range, or a single value. And what you do, you can do for I equal 1 TO, and you put stuff, and you put dot count, and then you put next I. Now, just to illustrate kind of how this works, we haven't done our sum yet, but if I would put, this will be like a count, if I put sum2, that's our output, equals stuff dot count, it will tell me how this will be a count instead of a sum. So if I put equal, excuse me, sum2, and take this whole area, this time you take the whole area, it will give you 12. Is that right? Are there 12 values? Okay, that's what you can do. All right, now let's, instead of doing this, we'll just put up here sum2 equals sum2. Now this, you could criticize VBA for this one, because if you did it in a different language, you wouldn't have to do that. Plus stuff, and then you put a little array counter. This could be any name you want, but it's a for loop that goes from 1 to 12. Okay, if you can get a for loop like this with an array, it's one of the biggest steps in working with VBA and macros in your financial models. And then we don't have to have this because we've already defined the sum2. And then all we do up here is go, we can just redo this. And then we've got our sum function. That's how easy it is. I've used the sum NA function and done other things like that, but I just want you to kind of get comfortable with the for loop. And that's what we're going to do with some of this. Now, I kind of went a little bit out of order because what we're going to do is we're going to go around and around. Now, to go around and around, let's put the CapEx in. That's the next thing we're going to need, just like we did before, but it's going to be a little bit different. Let's put for I equal 1 to cap x period count. And then we'll go down here and put next I. So that's going to go around and around, just like we did down here for the sum function. It's going to go around and around. After we've put that in, now we're getting harder because we're going to put the funding needs, just like in Excel, equals CapEx. Now this is like the sum function below. I could be anything again, plus DSRA, but this DSRA Compute. But this time we're going to multiply it by a flag. And we're not finished with the flag. That's what we just did in our little example. And then after we do that, we'll put a debt funding, which I need down here, debt funding. And this time I'm going to put an I variable, but I didn't read it in because we're just going to take it and multiply the funding needs times the debt percent. Now we'll read in the debt percent. Let's put the debt percent up at the beginning. Remember that you cannot have a range. You can't put any ranges in here. That's the pain. It took me like 3 years to figure out. Why doesn't it work when I put ranges here? It's not like a regular old sub macro. I don't know. Should I call that macro or subroutine? Who knows? Okay. So that's that. There's no debt funding here, though. We got the funding needs from the CapEx, and we also need a flag. Now that flag is just going to be this number over here that we read in, this flag. And all I did here, it's just a little whatever equals to the last period. Okay, so there we have that. Now, this funding needs is not there. So what we have to do is make a DIM funding, debt funding, and this time I'm going to put 100. And I don't even need to you can put as, single, double, variant, something like that. But for now, I'm trying to do this with the minimal amount that we'd actually need to do. Okay, so, but you will need that. And debt funding, this could be 1,000 if you want. Who cares? In the old days, that would be a real limit. When I used to have 2 disks in and out of my old gigantic whatever toaster laptop thing. Okay, but you don't. Well, who cares? All right, and we're starting to get there. Okay, but down here we have the DSRA Compute up here. Now the flag. This is really. I would have made a gigantic mistake. This has to have an I variable because this is going to be read in as an array. Okay, so far it's about okay, maybe, but the DSRA Compute is up here, and the DSRA Compute is down here. The debt is down here, but that comes from the debt funding up here, but we need the debt to compute the DSRA. So now what we need to do is go around all of this stuff, and we need to have a difference, just like this kind of. And I don't know if you saw the last video. It doesn't really matter if you didn't, but we can make a do while. Okay, do space while. And diff, I'll put difference. I can call it difference. But it's not a range name, not equal to 0. And remember, if we don't define this difference up front, it'll think the difference is 0. So we put difference. Do I spell it right? Be careful. Now, some fancy Excel people or VBA people will say, "You're such a shit." Oh, you should always put option explicit, which means that you have to define every single variable and get a little fancy. And then if you spelled it wrong, like Diffference, remember my auditors who said I spelled wrong, and they spelled the word misspelling wrong, and then you put loop here. But we're not quite finished. We have to define this difference and see how it changes. And what you do is you put last DSRA. Maybe there's a better way to do that. It's equal DSRA compute. That's the name of our function up here. And then we put, just before that, we put, at the very end, we put difference equals last DSRA minus DSRA compute. Okay, when we do that, it's the first time it does that, last DSRA is going to be 0 because we didn't have it. And then we're going to go around and around, compute the debt funding, get the total debt, and then the DSRA compute is going to be different. So there's going to be a difference that's not 0. And then we go around again, we go up around it. This is how you kind of look at it. Now the last DSRA is something, and you go around, and it's probably still not going to be the same, and you're going to have to go around and around and around and around. And that's how you would solve this one with a little bit of an array. If you actually do it, there's about a 99% chance that it's not going to work. And for me, there's about, because I've practiced this, is about a 70% chance it's not going to work. So right now, instead of putting this fixed, I'm going to put it over here, DSRA compute. And then I'm going to press Shift F3. And then I'm going to put our DSRA percentage in here. And then after that, I'm going to put my debt percent. And after that, I'm going to put a range, just like we did for the sum. I'm going to put a whole range of the CapEx. I called it cost, but it's really CapEx. Excuse me. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the flag. Remember, the flag was in a variable like the sum variable. Okay? Now, just to let you know, there's starting to be more arguments in the function. And once you have 12 different debt issues and development fees and the IDC on the different debt issues and commitment fees on the different debt issues and sculpting with different methods, those arguments are going to get so long it's going to become impossible to do. And that's what was driving me crazy. And that's what made me almost give up on this thing until Hetty said, "Don't give up." Okay, and then now this is not going to work. I can tell it's not going to work, and that's too bad because there's no equal here. But I'm going to go ahead and do it. It might be a error. See, I knew I had ambiguous name detected DSRA compute. Shoot. So what did I do? Just a minute. I'm going to have to pause. Okay, here's what I did. I made a sub called DSRA compute. So those are exactly the kind of errors that were going to drive you completely crazy. And when my friend, my buddy, said, "Super humble, sorry about your being," when he said, "Oh my gosh, this sucks," he is right. Okay, so we take that away, and then we put our thing here, and it still didn't work. Damn. Okay, it still gave us a value. Why is it giving us a value? Let's go and see this. Okay, well, one mistake I made was I didn't put this in. And, and now I wouldn't have found this. I was staring at this. I didn't see it. And then I noticed it's not capitalized. And this is why maybe people don't like this and like Excel better. And I understand these kind of things. Now let's try this again. Let's see what happens. If you press F2, then it worked. Okay. Maybe other people had seen this. Now, if I press F2 again and just enter this, so if I press Shift F3 to enter this and I put the DSRA percentage and the debt percentage and then the CapEx. Now, I'm putting this music on again because I figured it's then it won't be so horrible. I can't make these videos short. And notice that there's an equal sign now, okay? And now I can make my fixed value equal to the UDF value. And now I can start changing things. And the DSRA changes, and you can see the computed is the same as this one, and everything's fine. And if you can do this and take this to a more extreme level, you can really get rid of things. And it's a pain. There's no question it's a pain. If it wasn't a pain, if it was easy, everybody would do it, wouldn't they? Okay? But it does hopefully show you how to use a little of the VBA and get comfortable with this. And you can take yourself to the next level and you can get out of all these auditors and all this. Oh, they're making it so painful, our work with the modeling anymore. And now you can get more creative, make